Hey everybody, Perrin Levitt here for the Prepper Post News, courtesy of Freedom Prepper. Today is Friday, March 5th, 2021, and I think this is episode 101. So welcome to everybody at YouTube, Freedom Prepper, and everybody listening to the podcast. Got some links here, one in particular I'm going to recommend you go to and download. So check that out at freedomprepper.com, where all the stories are linked up every day. Let's talk about what may be the largest war crime or crime against humanity in all of world history. The and here's a little segue into that. The Jerusalem Post reported this week that the International Criminal Court, the ICC, had opened an investigation into both Israel and Hamas for war crimes in Gaza. That's terrible. It's a war. There probably are war crimes on both sides. Very, very bad. Sometimes I look at the news and I hate it for them. But honestly, I wish the ICC would open an investigation of a different kind of war crime. One that makes that, as bad as it is, pale in comparison. Here's some news that I don't think the Western media is going to tell you about. We had to go all the way to India for this story. If you want news about America or South America, you've got to go to Russia or India to get it. One of the free countries. This is from WION, New Delhi. And here's the headline: How Pfizer tried to bully Argentina and Brazil in exchange for vaccines. And the story points out that India, along with a lot of the other civilized countries, are putting out vaccines for different things, as they always do, and they try to help other countries. From the United States or Germany, you get corporate leeches, fascist corporate leeches, that take billions of dollars from their native host countries and then go around the world extorting other countries. Here is the story about what Pfizer has allegedly done or tried to do in Argentina and also in Brazil. I'll just read you this. And what it is, they of course want liability for this quote unquote vaccine they've come up with. And of course they get it everywhere. And Argentina was no different. They passed a law. But Pfizer didn't like the law, so they withheld the medicine, and they wanted the law tinkered with. Well, the law was tinkered with. They still didn't like it. Pfizer was still not happy and demanded the law be amended through a new decree, which Argentina refused. Good on you, folks. And by the way, we've got a listener viewer down in Argentina. If you know anything about this, feel free to put your comments down below. Tell us the local scene if you know anything about this. Pfizer then asked Argentina to buy an international insurance policy to pay for potential future cases against Pfizer, to which the country agreed. But then they had more demands. This is absolutely insane. Pfizer came back with more demands and demanded sovereign assets as collateral. They don't want to be responsible for anything bad that might happen with this vaccine, quote unquote. Pfizer wanted Argentina to put its bank reserves, military bases, and embassy buildings at stake. Bank reserves, military bases, and embassies as collateral to ensure that these private, fake people, corporations designed to dodge liability and suck up your money never have to face responsibility for anything. I skip on down here. But it's only if something goes wrong unintentionally. This does not apply to negligence. Negligence would be, the standard was if you know or if you should have known, but you did something anyway. I don't think that's what we're looking at. I think we're looking at outright malice. This was intentional. That's why I'd like to see the ICC or Russia or say anybody investigate this. But Pfizer wanted more, not just sovereign assets, but fraud insurance, something which Argentina did not agree with. Now, I can't imagine why the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Fox, the faux news network, aren't reporting on that. But I do want to know what you think about it. I've got some related stories, particularly looking for what our man down in Argentina has to say. What all of this is, I keep mentioning the book Unrestricted Warfare, and I once again link to it. This is a February 1999 book, about 200 pages, written by two colonels in the People's Liberation Army in China. They are Colonels Lang and Zhang Su. I hope I got those right. These two guys are brilliant, just absolutely brilliant, and and what they wrote. I linked to the copy translated by the CIA. Um, what this does is, and it's interesting. The CIA put a note on there that this is hard to read. Yeah, do you know why it's hard for you people to read? Because these guys are smarter than you are. And they go back through history. I find it beautifully poetic in a classical Oriental sense. They go back through history, and they do things like elevate Machiavelli over Sun Tzu and Clausewitz for no other reason that Machiavelli thought outside the box, and they point out that that's why he was rejected for centuries by the princes and monarchs of Europe, even though he was more right than Caesar or Cicero or just about anybody else writing about warfare and politics with other means or by. They find a way around Clausewitz' German English translation. They just say, what do they just call it an extension of war is an extension of politics. They point out in here that two guys at the U.S. Army War College, two smart, probably American colonels, came up with something very similar to what they wrote here, but earlier. It was a more primitive version, and it was completely ignored. Because Americans, the brass, the politicians know everything, nothing ever changes, and they go on to just point out how history catches people off guard if they're not willing to change. And it's interesting that it's 22 years later, and we get this. How long has this been in operation? And by the way, they're predicting the future very accurately, extremely accurately, based on their reading of history, not just ancient history or medieval history, but the 1980s and 1990s, the way warfare changed. And they look at everything as warfare, not just bullets and bombs and swords and shields anymore, but things like medicine, things like computers, nonprofit organizations, demographic changes. Like I've said before, you can have, and America may have now, war waged on us by multiple parties all over the place from all different directions. And it doesn't look like warfare, but it is. These guys call 9/11 2 years early. They point out, using Osama bin Laden's statements, they flatly predicted that he wouldn't hesitate to kill thousands of Americans just to get it, a random 10 that he really wanted. Or I guess it would be random thousands for the select 10. Kind of like what happened. And they point out also that as bad as bin Laden is when they were writing this, they calculated that the, what did they call him? The financial terrorist crocodile, George Soros, was much worse. Because whereas bin Laden hides, as they figuratively say, hides in the mountains of Islam, Soros hides in the forest of open capitalism, using our systems against us, the same way that a computer hacker would use our systems against us, the same way that Alexander used his. These guys, I'd like to meet them. I would like to meet these two guys. Please read that book. It's not a hard read. I guess it's hard. I suspect it was hard to translate from Chinese, but I think it's beautifully written. They quote Kipling. They can't stand Soros. They've got our number, And I just wonder how long this has been in effect in America and by how many parties, possibly to include international drug makers. You know, take a look at that. Some more Pfizer stuff. The Sun reports, and I don't know if this is good or bad. The Sun reports that excessive body fat may inhibit the effectiveness of the Pfizer quote unquote vaccine. So in America, well, let's see, 30 or 40% are obese, and at least 70% are overweight. So the majority, the large majority of the large Americans may have trouble with this vaccine, which could be a good thing or a bad thing. Just check your fraud insurance policy, Argentina. Let's see here. This is an allegedly story. I watched a video. I didn't really have time to look into this. Of course, the Western media won't verify this, but this is from the Defender. The Pfizer vaccine allegedly, I wasn't there, but allegedly killed 25% of the old folks in a German nursing home to which it was administered. And allegedly, it was administered by force. And there's a video. It's rather disturbing that you can watch where nurses and apparently a soldier are, holding these people down and giving them shots. That's not negligence. That's not fraud. That's a war crime. Maybe somebody should look into that. Now, this is Pfizer and or Moderna related because you can take your choice in New Mexico. But if you work in certain industries in, what county was that? One of the counties. It doesn't matter. None of this stuff matters anymore. They've mandated that first responders and police and so forth must take the vaccination. So the first lawsuit in the United Soviet States of America has been filed against a mandatory vaccination scheme. So take a look at that. We don't have law anymore in this country, which is why we have to go to, beg the ICC to look into crimes. So I don't hold out much hope for that. You could use the rhetoric that this is my body, it's my choice not to take this vaccine, quote unquote vaccine. You could say it's the same privacy right that the Supreme Court laid out in Roe versus Wade. And I imagine that they would have no trouble whatsoever disagreeing with you, striking that down, carving out a caveat, and just running right over you. They can always come back and say, look, you don't have to keep your job. I think this guy is a prison guard, and it is what it is. Now, in the USSA and the rest of the world, we're in the worst pandemic in recorded history. You may have heard that billions of Americans are already dead and more are dying. And I'm not sure if they're his handlers or his elder abusers, but the people behind Joe Biden during this time of national, critical, lethal life and death emergency are wisely trying to flood the USSA with even more incompatible third world immigrants than we already have, possibly to include all of them. If they could get them all here, they'd bring them all in. I guess they're all already pre-vaccinated. Is that a good idea? Very smart op-ed out of Russia about how that is bordering on insanity. But that's us, and we're so far over the border of insanity we can't even see it anymore. Let's see, and where's that leading to? Well, got some collapse-friendly headlines in the news that you won't find most places. Dr. Roberts did some reflection on the first Trump term, and by the way, this is recorded a little early. I haven't even checked. How did the fake news from the fake news pan out yesterday? Is Trump now in his second term? My guess is he is not. So Dr. Roberts looked at the Q hoax, the first term, and everything that's happened in the past year, and he asked the question, is Trump what we need? And his conclusion is no, not now. Goes through the good things that Trump did and the fact that a good man by himself just was not able to overcome Leviathan. He was stymied at every turn, mostly by his own people, because he couldn't find, you can't find real Americans to appoint to positions in America anymore. So he concludes that Trump is a populist, but the country is too far gone for that. A revolutionary is required, and the revolutionaries are all on the woke left. They're not all, but it just seems like they are right now. Where's this headed? Well, got a study finds poll here. Everybody will readily admit it's a nation divided. How divided? Badly divided, and not just left, right, up, down, red and blue. Nearly a third of the people polled in the U.S. Say they either want the country broken up into smaller regions based on some sort of nebulous ideology, or they're willing to live with that. And they link to a map that I've looked at before. The same map I think I talked about last week. It's 5 regions. Parts of them make sense, but there's much more than ideology at work here. A little too simplistic. Would it be a shame to have that happen? I don't know anymore. I just know that that's the historical pattern. It's pretty much inescapable, and it's going to be interesting. Interesting times. Today, tomorrow? Nah. Next year, maybe. 10 years, 20 years. Something is going to happen, because something always does happen. And people are already getting ready for that, even if they don't know it. Michael Schneider, who I talked about yesterday, good guy, had a very good article here about something I've been harping on for a year now. Get out of the cities. He's got a lot of evidence that people are permanently fleeing the mega cities. They're getting out of Los Angeles. They're getting out of New York for very good reasons. And he sees this, the media, the fake news, they portray it as a temporary fix. As soon as we can, everybody gets the negligent fraud insurance, then everybody can go back to work in the office. He thinks that's not going to happen. I agree. Your cities are losing large chunks of population. They're losing a lot of tax revenue. Services are faltering. He's got some videos attached that, from downtown LA. You got to see some of this stuff. He's a little upset because a lot of these folks, when they move out of Long Island, they flee to places like Bozeman, Montana, and that has the effect of driving up real estate prices. It's a seller's market in all the big popular suburbs, the big pretty towns, in the resort getaways. Prices are skyrocketing. A lot of these people looking to flee can't find a house to buy, and they're probably going to the wrong places. Because if you're thinking about moving, don't go where everybody else wants to be, because they're just going to take their problems with them eventually. If you go to the big, pretty, popular places, go to Florida, go out to Montana, Arizona, North Carolina, Georgia, Texas. If you flee from California to Texas, you're just out of the frying pan into the fire. I can't remember who this was that made the point. Might have been Roosh. I think Roosh made the point that if you want to get away. Go somewhere where not a lot of people want to live, and or where it's very difficult to live. And that might mean going, everybody in New York and California, they want to move to the red states. They want to move to Texas or Georgia or Tennessee. That may be a mistake, because if all the blues move to the reds, they turn purple, then blue. You might want to move to a blue state, like Vermont. They're a bunch of crazy liberals. All 5 of them. They live down in Burlington, and you'll never see them up in the North Woods, because it snows a lot, and most people can't handle that. Just things to think about. We got plenty of time, or not. The last word of the day is persecution. This is a story I'm sure you won't see at CNN or the New York Times. We've got Didi from the Committee on the Present Danger, China. China reports to Steve Bannon at his war room that 340 million Christians were persecuted globally last year, the most in history. 340 million. That's a lot. That's more than the population of the USSA. But I'd say that's an underestimation. You know, how bad? What kind of persecution are they talking about? This is a short story. I didn't watch. I don't watch those videos, but you know, if they're, you know, death squads roaming around looking for churches, probably not that much of it. There is some of that, but not that much. If it's everybody caving in to a series of never-ending hoaxes and shutting down worship as it's been performed for 2,000 years, that's persecution. If you can't get a job, or if you lose your job because of your beliefs, that's persecution. I wouldn't say it's all Christians facing that, but it's at least 340 million. It could be that many just in Europe and the United States. So, and we were promised that that would happen. So, in a way, that's cold comfort. It's confirmation. So anyway, that shall be the end of the Friday show. Hope you guys have a great week, had a great week, and have a great weekend. I'll be back on Monday, the March 8th. See ya then.